The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar today. I'm Christy Graham with Tekmark Global Solution, and I will be acting as the host today for our webinar/roundtable talk about PCI musts for today's business. Along with me from Tekmark, I have Lou Matino. He's the Director of Operations and Support. Welcome, Lou.
Good morning. Thank you.
So we're going to just give you a little bit of a background about Tekmark. Little FYI, we've been in the IT security and staffing business for over 35 years. We are an authorized scanning vendor, and we have been for the last 12 years since PCI has basically been started. We specialize in the retail and hospitality industry, utilizing services like managed firewall, managed PCI, and managed Wi-Fi. And we also do professional security services like social engineering, ethical hacking, and web application testing. On the other side of the table today, we have Bobby Cornwall. He's a senior manager and sales engineer for SonicWall. Welcome, Bobby.
Hey, good morning. Thanks.
Bobby, can you please give us a brief background on SonicWall and yourself?
Absolutely. So, again, Bobby Cornwell. I'm the senior manager for SonicWall's engineering department. And I'm also one of the lead PCI / retail security specialists for the company. SonicWall was founded in 1991, and we've been a leading provider of the security appliances for the retail industry for quite some time now. We do have quite a lot of specialized equipment for the retail and hospitality security. So, back over to you, Christy.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for joining us, Bobby, and we really appreciate it. So let's get started. So our agenda today is basically an introduction to what we're seeing in the industry. We're going to talk about point of sales. We'll talk about firewalls, hardware and software advances that we see in the industry. We're going to talk about Wi-Fi and obviously scanning that's required by PCI compliance. Just a reminder for all of our attendees, we will have a question and answer session at the end, so if you have any questions, please put them into the box throughout the presentation, and we'll be happy to address those at the end of the presentation. So we're going to just jump right in. This statement that we're looking at next, this is one of my favorite statements. I really, truly believe in this. In today's business landscape, one thing remains true. The bad guys are still trying to take advantage of your business. As your guests in your business needs change and you become even more reliant on technologies, how can you ensure you stay within the protective confines of PCI compliance? We say this all the time at Tekmark. The bad guys are still coming, and you got to stay inside and got to be compliant and be vigilant. Bobby, do you agree with that statement?
Absolutely, I do agree. When we're seeing every day from a security standpoint, we're seeing more and more sophisticated malware come out that is circumventing most systems out there. So, making sure that you're taking advantage of different aspects of PCI and making sure that your business is up to date is so, it's unbelievable how much you need to have this done.
Absolutely. I think due diligence is really, really important in security. It's required. So the point of sales is kind of where we all started, and the evolution of point of sales has been crazy in the last 10 years. We started off, I remember, when, we had to punch in every single number and hit plus and hit another number in and hit plus. Then we moved into computers and being able to scan barcodes. Now we've moved on to tablets. And the latest generation is like the North Star order entry solution that you'll see on this next slide. And this solution is all-encompassing. It's got the order entry at the table, mobile ordering, handheld for your staff, online ordering. In the industry relying on the internet and Wi-Fi, even with encryption and EMV, protection is so crucial. Bobby, what are you seeing with all these changes, and what all is SonicWall doing to keep the retail and hospitality industry safe?
That's a great question, actually. And so basically, this brings up a great situation. So the point of sale system is going from a standard cash register to a computer system and now to a portable laptop / iPad type system, it shows you kind of like, how things have evolved over time. Well, unfortunately, malware has been evolving as rapidly as the equipment has been changing. And the equipment had changed is because of convenience. You went from a cash register with tape that you had to go back and review all the tape to a computer that now you can actually run a batch file. You can find out what credit cards were used. You can start doing marketing data for people, to the iPads that is so convenient now that you walk into the store. But what you don't realize is the hacking industry, we've been tracking it to be a $190 billion industry, meaning that with all the theft, all the credit card theft, all the ransomware that you've been seeing in the retail market space over the last couple of years, $190 billion has been lost. So from SonicWall's perspective, we have been receiving more and more samples of malware that have been targeted for specific point-of-sale systems, specific operating systems. We have seen hackers not only go after the point-of-sales, vendors, like for example, after the retail market space, but they're going after the point-of-sales vendors. As an example, with Oracle, they were able to infiltrate the Oracle system to push down updates, and when they pushed down the update, it pushed down malware. So, with a $190 billion industry, when you try to take that away from somebody, that's a lot of money to energize people to find new tactics and new ways to get around it. So from from SonicWall's perspective, we have to absolutely make sure we keep up with the market space and make sure that while you are buying these for convenience, because it is absolutely necessary in today's age to be very fast, to be very efficient, and to keep your costs low from your point of sales, security is still a high risk here. Back to you, Christy.
Absolutely, and I know that we just heard of Shoney's had the same thing. They had a malware breach, and
That's right.
that was just last week, and it's not going to end. It's going to continue, and the hackers are just getting smarter. So moving on to firewall security, Bobby, so SonicWall, you're truly an industry leader. What are you doing? First, what are your threats out there? And then second, what are your best practices for PCI?
Oh, very, very good question. So if you would mind, go to the next slide. So I know this chart's kind of a little bit of an eyesore, but all you need to do is just be able to see the little balls and how it works. So what we're seeing is, let's go back 5 years. When we went back 5 years, the threats were not as sophisticated. There was not that many threats. There was maybe 1 to 2 type of malware that were out there for point-of-sale systems, but the execution of them was not that great. And PCI standards were, they were pretty much spot on. But then, guess what happened? All of a sudden, people realized, hey, there's so many vendors out there that are not PCI compliant. So they started making more sophisticated malware. And then those vendors finally caught on, and then all of a sudden you started seeing more and more money getting stolen from credit cards. Well, guess what happens? American Express, Visa, MasterCard, they come back and say, hey, why are we taking on this liability? We need to make our standards more strengthened. So they start changing PCI. Next thing you know, PCI goes from PCI 2.0 to 2.1, 2.2, 3, 3.0. Then you're going 3.1, 3.2. It automatically went into a rapid succession. And what we saw is that security went from, just a little blimp on the radar to look when you get to the red. In 2015, there were so many malware attacks on point-of-sale systems, so many variants, that it was almost impossible for PCI, for anybody to keep up with those different types of threats, those different types of variants. And hence the reason why you had PCI 3.1 that came out and said, hey, you need TLS and you need encryption. And then in the same breath, 3.2 comes out just a few months later saying, oh, wait, TLS is not secure enough. You need to go to TLS 1.2. You need to have the latest. So it's amazing that even the PCI standards are having such a hard time keeping up with the malware writers. Next slide, please. Now, one of the things that we look at from SonicWall's perspective is how complicated a network actually is or needs to be. we focus a lot on the retail food industry. We also work in the retail, merchandise industry as well. But in the retail food industry, it's actually amazing because there's a lot of networks out there that are so enterprise-centric, and customers go out and buy the cheapest hardware, the cheapest security they can find, because they think they're meeting these standards for PCI. But what they don't realize is that it's actually a lot more complicated than what it looks. And if you start talking about what it looks like, go to the next slide, please. What I'd like to do is just peel off the skin a little bit, and let's take a look and see what a typical retail food industry looks like. So first of all, you've got the DVR camera systems. Now, unfortunately in this day and age, you got to have cameras. You got to be able to watch the customers and the employees. You have to make sure that nobody's breaking in to steal stuff. You got to make sure that employees are not stealing stuff. You got to make sure that everything is secure. Now, that DVR camera system typically is tied to a point of sales register. So we can see the transaction, we can see the employee, and we know how much money is being passed through their hands. This also happens in gas stations and convenience stores. Well, that DVR that's recording all this, all the film from the day, from the videos, the manager likes to actually access that box. Well, how do you access the box to watch the videos? You access it through the internet. So you log into the box through the internet. You don't have a manager in the store or the owner of the franchise walking in the door and accessing it from inside the network. You have them coming in. So therefore, there's a point of entry. Also, the point of sale systems itself. The point of sale system is extremely crucial. It needs to be separated on a separate network. It contains people's credit card data. And it's not that the point of sale system is actually writing the credit card data and storing it, because obviously that would be illegal based on the PCI standards. But what do you do if malware gets on that point of sale system, and the next thing you know, you swipe a credit card and it's reading the memory of the point of sale system, the actual RAM in it? That is how almost every single one of the credit cards that have been stolen in the last couple of years have been stolen, is that the malware is actually reading the physical memory before it actually, the software encrypts the credit card information. So it's extremely crucial to have this segmented. What about the digital board, the digital sign, or not the, the digital board that has, like, here's my menu. A lot of times that's tied to the point of sale system, but it's utilizing a Linux box on there, which again is something that can be infected, because that Linux box has connections to the outside. It has connections to the point of sale system. So again, it's a possibility of a breach point. What about that drive-through timer? That's pretty cool, right? You want to know how many people are coming through your drive-through, how fast they're getting through the drive-through. What about the fact that it's usually monitored by a third-party company, which means now you have a third-party company a third-party company's hardware on your network. You do not have control over it. It's connected to the internet. It's transmitting data. What happens if that gets compromised and becomes a drive-through transmitter that transmits your credit card information? Why should you keep that on the network? Then you've got your transaction PC and batch PC in the back. So if you're doing a lot of credit card transactions and you got to send it to a server in the back end, all of a sudden now you've got to worry about that server if that's compromised. A lot of managers use that PC in the back. Next thing you know, the manager's going to a bad website, that computer gets compromised, all the credit card numbers are sitting there in a bat file or in a database file, and it's compromised, it's gone. What about the freestyle Coke machines? I love that. You have this like freestyle Coke machine sitting in your network, and it's got a Windows-based operating system, and then the hackers actually will be able to put some really cool wording on the screen that's like, have a Coke and a smile, oh, and you've been hacked. I mean, all this technology, all this stuff that we're seeing from a convenience standpoint are points of breaches. These are points of entries. What about guest network? What about point of sales wireless network? What about the manager's PC? If you take a look at this network that I have in front of you, you should have this network completely segmented. The point of sale system should be segmented by itself, no access from outside, unless it's a manager or somebody who is authorized, in which case when they access that network, they should access that network via a VPN that allows them to enter a username and password so you can trace and see who is accessing it. That digital timer, that digital timer for the drive-through, it should be segmented off. It should not be on your point of sales network. If it has to talk to the point of sale system, you can actually put a rule into a firewall that says only this device can talk to this device. No, nothing else can it do. What about the digital boards? Same exact thing. Segment that stuff off. If it has to talk to the point of sale system, then you can actually create a rule that says only this board with this MAC address can talk to this point of sale system, nothing else. It cannot receive or transmit information from any other party. The Coca-Cola machine should absolutely be completely segmented off. The only thing it needs to do is call back to Coca-Cola and say that you're out of syrup. Your manager's PC ought to be on its own network. Then you got the guest Wi-Fi. Obviously, you don't want to have that anywhere near your point of sales network, so you want to segment that off. So in just this one network, there's several items that you have to segment off. You cannot do this with a standard firewall. You cannot do this with a firewall that you go buy at Fry's or Best Buy or Walmart. You're not going to be able to do that. And then what do you do if you do have a firewall that's there, and let's say, for example, you have a Linksys or a Netgear or one of these firewalls that you bought at Walmart. Let's say you said, oh, I closed down all the ports and nothing can get into my network. It's completely isolated. What do you do when somebody actually gets into your network from the side? Some user or some person walks in and sticks a USB keychain in a point of sale system. And then the next thing you know, the point of sale system is infected and now is sending out malware. And usually that's what happens, is it actually sends out malware. So hopefully your firewall is not only smart enough to block traffic coming in, but block traffic going out. And guess what the default is? Almost every firewall out there in the marketplace that is sold to these retail locations allow anything to go out. Next slide, please.
Very, very true. I agree with that. So Lou, I know that we're a Tekmark Tekmark is a SonicWall house. Can you tell us a little bit about our Tekmark services that we provide?
Absolutely, Christy, and thanks for the intro before. Lou Matino here, everyone, Director of Operations for Tekmark's Managed Services. And getting into this, we're a big SonicWall shop here at Tekmark. One of our primary services is managed PCI, and the first step in that process is using a SonicWall firewall to completely lock down your environment, as as was just described by Bobby. On top of that, we offer a host of other services. For the PCI customer, we do a quarterly internal and external scan, which is something that's required for PCI compliance that you submit to your merchant on a quarterly basis. And one of the nice things about our service is when we do the external or the internal scan, if we find a vulnerability, we will fix it for you, since we have management capability of the firewall on your network. In addition to that, we will perform what's called a SAQ review. As many of you may know, as part of PCI compliance, you need to, on an annual basis, submit a self-assessment questionnaire to your merchant. And a lot of times, if you've been through that process before, you know that a lot of those questions can be very difficult, very confusing, very technical. And by having our service, we will have one of our engineers walk through the SAQ with you and make sure that you understand how to answer all of those questions. One of the nice things we can do for our merchants is, for our customers, is we can recognize what your PCI exposure is and actually help you be able to just kind of answer a lot of sections of the PCI form at a high level and not have to dig too deep into the weeds with some of the more esoteric questions that appear there, because we cover that with some of the high level responses that we were enabled to give as a result of our service. And another thing we do as part of our service is breach protection, and I think, Christy, we're going to get into that a little bit later in the program, correct?
Yeah, we will, I'm sure. All right, so let's talk about hardware and software advances. We have seen the old way of swiping credit cards kind of going by the side. It worked best. Now we have the EMV chips, the encryption, tokenization, and the ability to pay with your phone. Bobby and Lou, are these answers to all of your security issues, or are these really just narrowing the scope and then extra steps that you should be doing?
Bobby, by all means.
Yeah, I mean, these are narrowing the scope, but it's definitely not the answer to everything. With the chip card technology, obviously Europe has been doing the chip card technology for quite some time, and we've started to adopt this. One of the things that America is known for is convenience, and everything we've said so far in regards to the point of sale systems and the evolution of point of sales has been about a convenience, right? So one of the downfalls of the chip technology that we have is while it's more secure, the problem is if you take that chip card and insert it into a compromised reader, and that compromised reader will say, please insert the card again, error. Well, the end user just inserts the chip again. It doesn't make any difference. Well, what happens is that compromised reader will actually take and authorize two numbers. Now, the way the chip works, if that same number is used twice, which is a unique number, all of a sudden that card is completely terminated and a new card is sent to you in the mail, and nobody is able to steal your information. But what about that second number that was automatically read? Well, guess what? That second number can be used one time for one authorization. So if the bad guys allowed the first transaction to go through and saw that it was $75, and they figured, hey, he's got a credit limit of at least $75, let's try this authorization and say it's a good one. They turn around and sell it on the black market. Guess what? The black market, now that this is a chip card with a one-time authorization, the cost of this number is going to be more lucrative, which means that they're going to get more money for it. So yes, while you're narrowing the scope, while you're helping to alleviate some of the stress and some of the liability, taking your eyes off of it is not the way to go. You definitely still got to be vigilant. You still got to be secure, and you still got to understand, what you're up against. Back to you, Christy.
Absolutely, I agree with that completely. So we've talked about all these advances. We're seeing the POS systems advance, but what they're really doing is they're really relying on Wi-Fi. So when you're running your business on your Wi-Fi and your guests are demanding Wi-Fi, and I know, I've got a 7-year-old. Last night went out for dinner at a local restaurant, and I was like, they don't have guest Wi-Fi, so I have to turn a hotspot on to keep her entertained on the iPad so I can talk to my older children and have a conversation. So, Bobby, what are you seeing with the wireless security and where it's going?
That's a good question, and I have kids also, and I can tell you that, in today's age of kids, we've got our work cut out for us in the next couple of years. They are
yes,
kids
so
are
true.
more sophisticated than they need to be. But in Wi-Fi, unfortunately, Wi-Fi is one of those areas that it's about convenience, right? So the reason why Wi-Fi is so popular is because it's so convenient. I don't have to have a wire tethered to me, so I can get up, walk around. A lot of stores now are having people walk around and want to check you out. Matter of fact, if you go to Chili's or if you go to some of these different restaurants that have the new remote checkouts like Red Robin, where you can sit there at your table and swipe your credit card and check out without even having to talk to a waitress or a waiter. It's all about convenience. But unfortunately, Wi-Fi is one of those areas that has never had the luxury of being as secure as a wire. So with SonicWall, we actually make our own access points. I understand that, with Tekmark, you guys utilize, different types of vendors. You use ours and use a different vendor because not every customer has the same needs. You have to be diverse. And that's extremely important into the wireless network is you have to be diverse. You have to know your environment. You have to know your customer's environment, and you have to know your guests that are coming in, because if you're offering guest Wi-Fi, it's important to make sure that you're actually able to accommodate multiple types of devices. It's important that you accommodate your point of sale system, your manager, and make sure they have connectivity. And then it's important to maintain security on one side of the spectrum and then not have security on the other side, because your guests, you can't ask them to enter PIN numbers and all this other stuff. So, SonicWall makes access points that are very secure. They're not your standard again, retail shop type access points that you can just buy off the shelf. We incorporate certain technologies, certain security, certain encryption levels. These actually meet the PCI standards and actually exceed their scanning standards, because we can scan, we can look for other access points, make sure that there's no other rogue access points. What a lot of customers don't realize is that how easy it is to have a network jack at a restaurant sitting on the side of the wall because they used to have a kiosk there. Some, hacker kid or whatever comes in there, plugs in a little portable access point into that jack, sits over at the table in the corner. Nobody suspects a thing. This dude's just lit up an access point on your network, on your point of sales network, and is sitting there doing hack attacks inside your network trying to get into the point of sale systems. I can't tell you how many times we have discovered that in reports and seen this in our data that we collect. And Christy, what about you guys? I mean, since you're a diverse company and you meet customers' needs, I mean, are you seeing the same thing?
We are. We do see that we need to have Wi-Fi to be more secure. We see that restaurateurs and retail is going to the iPad solutions, the tablet solutions, and that Wi-Fi is an easy access point, and it's a vulnerability that most people think, well, it's Wi-Fi, it's all secure. Well, it's not unless you put the right pieces in the puzzle together. So we use sonic points. We also use Arrowhive equipment, access points. We look at our customers' needs and we find what's going to fit them and work for them. Lou, can you tell us a little bit about Tekmark's managed Wi-Fi services?
Sure, I'd love to. First off, we start out with a site survey. We go to the site. We'll see what's going to maximize coverage for your guests, for your business, and for your point of sale system. We have a team that will do what's called a predictive survey so that we make sure there's good Wi-Fi coverage. Most importantly, when we set up the Wi-Fi, as we've been discussing, we make sure we segment the point of sale and give it its own credentials, its own private shared key, credentials that only the point of sale system is going to be able to utilize for the transmission of any credit card data within the Wi-Fi connectivity. It's all going to be segmented. It's all going to go just to the point of sale. We'll also provide, as required by our clients, guest Wi-Fi on a separate segment, or business Wi-Fi if they need that computer that Bobby had referenced earlier, where you need to run the business, you need to surf the web, you need to send email. You certainly don't want that type of computer doing those things on your point of sale network. However, you would love for that device to have a wireless connectivity. So we'll set up a separate segment so you can have the business Wi-Fi. Incorporated with that is web content filtering and application controls that allows us to segment traffic for your point of sale and prioritize that traffic. So even if you have 100 people banging away at your guest Wi-Fi, we'll still dedicate bandwidth to your point of sale system to make sure it's running smoothly and properly. And then above and beyond all of the those service elements, the introduction of Wi-Fi into your business allows for a lot of other opportunities. Can we go to the next slide? Great. So as you look at this next slide, you'll see we talk about how we work with Arrowhive. As we've mentioned, we work with SonicWall. We have these other partners that can offer a host of other add-on services to your Wi-Fi. For example, this company ZenReach will create programs so that you can have loyalty programs, and if you want to email your clients or text them a coupon for when they come back, you can do that. We have this partner, Euclid Analytics, which will set up metrics whether or not the customer even uses your Wi-Fi. The analytics will sense the presence of their smartphone, and it will give you metrics like how long they were at your location, whether or not they are a repeat customer. If you have multiple locations, does that smartphone appear in multiple locations? It provides a wealth of information so that you can make business decisions based on those metrics. Then there's our partner Cloud4Y, which offers additional services like a captive portal where you can, you know, when your customers log in, it can take you immediately to a video promoting your service or to a coupon right off the bat, the way you can maybe if you've used Yelp or something like that. This could be something customized for your clients and your guest Wi-Fi. And then we mentioned Verizon here as one of our many partners, AT&T, Sprint, whoever gives the best cellular service in your area, so we can set up a wireless data backup so that in the event there's a problem with your main internet connection, you can fail over to wireless and have continuous operations.
And I always tell our customers, Lou, you know, that I think Wi-Fi can make us money, can make you money as a business owner. It shouldn't just be an expense. If you're utilizing one or all of these tools that we have available with our partners, your Wi-Fi can actually drive your business. Instead of just being an expense, you can actually utilize it to make your money. And one of our big selling features also is using this wireless backup and making sure we have the best coverage for your area is we make sure that it's reliable and stable service. So that's really important. So we're going to move on to the next slide, which is PCI scanning. Bobby, what have you seen with PCI scanning?
So we've seen, you know, with PCI scanning, there's a lot of customers out there that don't do it, right? I mean, unfortunately, we've been called to locations and go in there and find out that nobody's really looked at their network or audited it. We've got customers that do the self-assessments and they fill it out and they say, oh, I've done a self-assessment and I don't have to worry about anything else. And then, you know, we get that little odd call where they say, hey, you know, we're calling because apparently there's been a breach in our network and you know, we've been audited and we've been asked to come in there and find out what's going on. Can you tell us what's wrong with our firewall? And, you know, the first question we ask is that, okay, so did you guys ever get a PCI scan or a PCI audit to verify that you guys had the settings right and that you were in compliant with the forms that you filled out or in compliant with your merchant level? No, it was too expensive. Well, that's the problem, is that what we see is that customers, sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't. And then sometimes customers say they do their own scanning, which can be very dangerous because if you don't know what you're doing and you don't know what you're looking for, doing your own scanning is not necessarily going to help you. You know, so, you know, that's the stuff that we've been seeing, Christy.
Wonderful. Okay, so Lou, we're Tekmark's an authorized scanning vendor. We have been for 12 years. What do our services include with that?
Sure. So there's pen testing, internal pen testing, external pen testing. But just to follow up on what Bobby was saying, you know, there are automated and inexpensive services out there where you can just, you know, type in your IP address and say, give me an external scan. And that's great. But if the results come back and say you have a vulnerability, you then need, you know, to find or hire an IT person to, you know, to get rid of that vulnerability because you can't submit a failed scan to your merchant provider. So we'll make sure that doesn't happen. And the internal scans are actually much more complex because that's checking for vulnerabilities on every piece of equipment that's attached to your point-of-sale network, all your point-of-sale terminals, any printers, any devices that are part of the point-of-sale network are scanned for vulnerabilities. And then, you know, if there's issues there, they can be even more difficult to remediate if you don't know, you know, if you don't have technical expertise. So these are a lot of the things we bring to the table with our PCI scanning expertise.
And Lou, you make a great point, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, Christy, but I wanted to make one more point that I think is extremely crucial for whoever is listening to this, you know, to this presentation. If you're a level 4 merchant, meaning that, you know, you only need to do a security audit, you know, based on a self-assessment, if you get compromised, and this is something you can find out from your merchant, you can find this out from Visa, MasterCard, American Express. It's not something that I'm just making up. This is public knowledge. If you get compromised because of a breach, and they do and the vendor requires you to have an audit done, which most of the time, if there's a compromise, you can bet your butt there's going to be an audit that's going to be required. And that audit can consist of, you know, something that's going to cost you in excess of anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000, give or take. If they come back and find out that what you did was not compliant, in other words, you fill out a self-assessment and you said you were compliant, and yet they found out you were not compliant with your self-assessment, they can actually require you to meet level 1 merchant requirements, meaning you've got to meet all 12 domains of the PCI requirements. That now is taking you from a small business company that does a self-assessment to spending possibly up to $100,000 a year in maintaining PCI requirements. Hence the reason why you always hear this saying, over 60% of businesses go out of business when they're compromised. So keep that in mind when you think that, you know, not having a PCI scan is going to save you money. Think about what's going to happen in the long run if that does happen and you weren't covered. So go ahead, Christy.
Absolutely
and again,
true.
I'm sorry to take that away from you.
No, absolutely true. I totally agree with you. You know, we tell people all the time, clicking yes is not the answer when it comes to the SAQ. You know, the SAQ is a self-assessment questionnaire that you have to do annually. If you process, transmit, or store credit card data, you fall under PCI requirements. Doesn't matter if it's one credit card or if it's 1 million credit cards that you do. If you store, process, or transmit them, you fall under PCI compliance, and you are to fill out an SAQ annually. So Lou, with all these advances and changes, how does Tekmark handle the SAQ?
Right. Well, we actually engage the client. We arrange an appointment. We know when your SAQ is going to be due because we keep track of that in our monitoring system. We know when we're supposed to do your scans. We know when you're going to have your SAQ. And we'll actually reach out to you and say, hey, it's time for your SAQ. Let's schedule some time to go through this. Make sure that you know how to answer all these questions. Make sure you know which sections at a high level you can answer so you don't have to dig too deep. And make sure you get this submitted to your merchant. There are a lot of questions on that SAQ where, as Christy said, for example, you could do everything right, do all your, you know, your lockdown, your router, get everything PCI compliant. But if your boss needs to use a remote desktop tool to get into the network, and they're not using two-factor authorization to get in there, and they have like an easy password or something, then guess what? Someone's going to end up hacking into your network through that remote desktop or through that remote tool. And even though you've done everything right, because you said you do employ two-factor authorization or authentication on that remote tool, and in reality, your boss just had a simple login ID and password to get through, then that's going to be considered a failure on the company's end. So we make sure all those things, we answer all those questions, we make sure you're doing the right things to avoid those types of situations.
Absolutely, and the SAQ is 200 questions, it's 40 pages, and by putting in the proper firewall, doing all the segmentation, putting end-to-end encryption, using EMV and having the proper EMV readers in your stores, you narrow that number of questions. You take it from being 200 questions you have to answer to about half of that, if not less, and having someone that manages your firewall can answer those questions for you just makes your life easier. You know, we also see third-party breaches a lot. You know, it's not, if you know, Home Depot several years ago, we all heard about their breach. They were breached from their HVAC company. So it's not only your company that you need to make sure secure, but anyone who has access into your environment. And that's what having that firewall locked down and segmented correctly is there for. So, folks, we are at the question and answer section of our presentation today. We've gone through all the steps, basically, for the PCI compliance. We want to be mindful of everyone's time. We're going to answer a few questions, and it looks like we've got a few good ones. So this one's a good one, and Lou, we kind of talked about this a little bit ago. Is there such a thing as PCI insurance?
Okay, so what we offer as part of our service is breach protection, and we don't use the word insurance because technically it's not insurance, but what it is $100,000 of coverage in the event you are breached. and that's a service that is included with our our managed PCI service, as kind of like making you feel good that the service you're getting is actually going to do what you're paying it to do, and it's going to protect you and keep you covered. So yes, we do offer a $100,000 breach protection as part of our service.
And that service, you know, there's a 17-year-old out there that can hack anybody. We all know that. Or there's an employee, as Bobby stated earlier, that could come in and put, or a customer, and put that USB port into one of your outlets and put malware on there. That protection covers you for both those instances. It's going to cover your fines. It's going to cover any fees that you have that come through that. So we give it to you. It's part of our plan. We just give it to you. We feel that everyone should have that extra layer of protection. But having that firewall and that segmentation is your starting point. Let's talk about, here's another one I have on here. I'm not technically inclined. How do I know if I'm PCI compliant? Okay, I'm going to go the easy answers, call me. But really what the answer for that for me is, you know, Tekmark doesn't matter what size your business is, whatever, if you're big or small. You need to run your business. Your job is to flip hamburgers, make elegant dinners, run a retail location. Let us worry about your IT security, and you worry about running your business, and we'll take that burden for you. Anybody got anything else on there?
No, that's perfect. I mean, one of the biggest problems is, you know, these self-audit reports and the technology that goes into this is complicated. It's not something that's easy. If it was easy, then, you know, I guess why do we need PCI, right? You know, PCI
right.
is in there. You know, the whole point of the PCI is to make sure that it's not easy. You don't want the hackers to have an easy way in. So having a company like yourself that does that can go in and take care of this, you know, on behalf of this customers or behalf of the franchise owners, is super important. And what you guys said a minute ago about the insurance, that's actually pretty cool. You know, a company that not only can rescue you or take care of your IT needs, take care of your PCI audit needs, but at the same time give you a little bit of value in your money that you just spent, because they're providing you with an insurance policy that says, listen, you know, yes, you are spending money on us. You're hiring our company to come out there and do this assessment, or we're doing your IT work for you, and we hope that you trust us enough because we're going to give you this policy. I mean, that's amazing.
Thank you. All righty, so here's our next question we have. You've talked about different solutions today. What are the costs? Lou, you got an answer for that one, or you want me to take it?
You know, actually, you know, that's a question that I was going to kind of bring up if there was going to be any closing comments. But since someone asked, I do want to just impress on everyone that although this sounds like a lot, this is actually a very affordable service. The pricing is dependent on your specific needs, and it's something where we would encourage you to have a conversation with Christy following this panel discussion to let us learn a little bit more about you so that we can give you pricing. But when you consider how much it would cost to have an IT person on staff, or how much it would cost to even employ someone on an as-needed basis to handle your IT needs, I think you're going to be very pleasantly surprised by how affordable this is for your business.
Awesome. Wonderful. All right, so here's our last question. We're going to be mindful of everyone's time, try and get us out of here a little bit early. If you have any other questions that we haven't seen, we'll reach out to you individually. But this one, I like this question a lot. What do you see as your greatest challenge with IT security? Bobby, what do you see as the greatest challenge?
So the greatest challenge that I see is basically cost and education. We see that, you know, the cost of IT security is not cheap. It's something that, you know, unfortunately, you've got to pay to play. You've got to pay to be secure. And we know that it's a challenge for certain customers. We, you know, one of the things that we really do a great job on is making sure that we have an affordable solution that gives you enterprise class quality, okay? But education, I don't think that you can even put a price tag on education. Education is something that, you know, you can secure your network until you're blue in the face, And then all it takes is one employee to walk in the door, found a USB drive sitting on the ground somewhere, and does something crazy like, oh, this is a computer, not a point-of-sale system. Let me plug this USB drive into it and see what happens. Next thing you know, everything in the network is compromised, and all that technology, all that cost you put into security is out the door. I mean, Christy, what do you think? I mean, from y'all's perspective, same thing?
So from my perspective, I totally agree with you. Education is probably my biggest challenge every day, and it's educating the hospitality and the retail community about what they're required to do, and then help them protect their brand and their name and their business. And that's what we do. We help them protect their brand. It's really important, and we find that majority of the folks that we talk to would have no PCI information or very little, and they feel like, oh, well, my PCI, my POS system is secure. Does that mean I'm secure? It's out of scope. Well, your Wi-Fi, if you're out of scope, per se, it might be because they're running on an iPad solution or a tablet solution. And if your Wi-Fi is not secure, it's not without scope. So it's within the scope. So you do need to make sure that you have everything segmented correctly. So education, I 100% letting our customers know these are the tools you need to know, and how we can protect you and how you can protect yourself. So that's really important for us. I want to take this time right now to thank Bobby and Lou for joining me today for our roundtable discussion. We will be doing a webinar next month, so everybody look for your invites. We'll have another roundtable again. Next steps, if you have any questions or want to follow up on anything, you're welcome to reach out to myself, Christy Graham. I'm with Tekmark Global Solutions, or Lou Matino, also with Tekmark Global Solutions. We'd love to help you anytime. With that, I'm going to say goodbye and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you.